Thanks so much. This is our veteran speaker series, and I'm really excited that we have Rondi Lambeth with us today. He's a financial strategist, plus he has a lot of other amazing things that he's done to share with us. And we also have Linda Martin with us, an amazing news anchor with so many awards. I can't even think of all of them, but I'm really excited for her to be here and interview Rondi. If you're logging in, please keep yourself muted to cut down the noise, and we will have a question and answer session towards the end of the talk. So, but now I'm going to let Linda and Rondi take it away. I combined your guys' names.
Hey, I get called Rhonda and Rodney and Ronnie and Ronald and all that other stuff all the time. So I thought you were just talking about me.
Well, thank you, Julie. And that was a great introduction. And I've been called all sorts of things too. I'm sure that some I don't want to hear, but so to introduce Rondi, it's really fascinating. You know, the whole military to firefighter to a top credit advisor in the country with these amazing podcast series, and also this class, what is it? 7 days to 740 credits. Correct me if I'm wrong, but really interesting stuff to help so many people with their financial troubles. And you know, if for a little intro, while serving in the military, he was called to serve his local community. He spent 15 years as a firefighter. That's really close to my heart. My brother was a firefighter too for a long time. In 1999, he was one of the first responders to the Columbine high school shooting. And then in 2006, and I'm going to let you tell that story about your why too, about why it was important for you to start doing what you're doing now. So Rondi Lambeth, thank you so much for joining all of these veterans and Julie and myself, and for being here.
Yeah, thank you. You know, I had started in the fire services in 1993. I actually put myself through the fire academy in 1992. And then I went to work as a garbage man. I was a garbage man for 5 years in Denver. Garbage man by day, hero by night for Sheridan Fire. And then I got hired full-time with Littleton Fire. And that's when I started my career firefighter that actually got paid. And my second year as a career firefighter, my 7th year as a fireman, I got firefighter of the year. And then I got moved to the busiest rescue in Denver metro area, where we'd run 12 to 15, sometimes 20 calls a day. And because of that, I was constantly saving lives. I mean, and when you do it over and over and over again, it's just another day. You don't really think about it until maybe later. And so here I am thinking I'm this superhero, not really, but I'm feeling pretty proud of myself. I'm very happy with myself. I'm very proud member of community. I'm respected. And people, you know, they shower us with affection most of the time. And so I ended a shift and I got back, I turned on my cell phone, and I had all these voicemails from my mom. And I don't really have at the time, I didn't have any relationship with my mom because I left home when I was 15. I left home because I grew up not too far from where I live now in Boise, Idaho. I grew up in a shack with no running water, no electricity. We got our food out of a dumpster. And sometimes my stepfather would kill our animals and make us eat our pets, and he would beat us and torture us. And at 15 years old, I left home. I had enough of it, so I left. And my little brother, Zeke, was one of them that I left. I left 5 siblings. I'm the oldest of 11, but I left 5 siblings. So I had a little bit of guilt for leaving. So I didn't really have a great relationship with my mom. So the fact that she was calling me, I figure it's pretty important. So I listened to the voicemail, and she calls me and says, hey, your little brother had an accident. Now, Zeke was also a firefighter in Oregon. So I figured there was something wrong. Something happened at work. So I called her, and she said the accident was he shot and killed himself last night. Now, he did this because going into it, he had a little bit of credit card debt, a little bit of collection debt. And when I say a little bit, I have suits, not to say that I have, you know, these fancy suits, but I have clothes that cost more money than the debt that he ended his life over. And for him, it was this massive mountain of debt, and he had the collection calls and the stress, and his girlfriend dumped him over it because he was a loser because he couldn't pay his bills. And so he ended his life over silliness, just a little bit of debt, but it wasn't silly for him. So as a firefighter, I took that really personally, because here I thought I was out there doing what I was supposed to be doing, saving complete strangers' lives. And yet I didn't even know what was going on with my own little brother. And so at that point, I really started losing my love of being a fireman. And 2 years later, I retired and I started Fortress, which is America's first paid on results credit repair company. And I started it really as a charity and a nonprofit where I did this all for free for people. They would come in, meet with me in my real estate office, because I also own a real estate company. So they'd meet with me and I'd sit down, I'd pull their credit, I'd go through their finances, and I'd look for all the problems and where they're spending their money. And I'd come up with a plan. And then I would go, and in 30 days, I would have their credit completely fixed. Well, the demand got bigger and bigger and bigger. So I turned it into a business. And now we're one of the most successful credit repair companies in America. Since then, I started doing radio shows and TV shows. And I had a radio show in San Diego on KPRZ for 7 years, Monday through Friday at 5:30 p.m. And then I've done lots of TV interviews. I've spoken at Harvard, at Yale, and all this other stuff. And really, it comes down to what you asked me. Why did I start this? And it was because my little brother ended his life at 26 years old over a few $1,000s worth of credit card debt. And I didn't want anybody else to do it. So
that is an incredible why. I mean, that's why it's so good to start with that. Then you think about all these transitions, and these are not easy transitions. It's not easy to go out and do the public circuit and to start a company that's different like this. So how was that transition for you, especially for all of these the veterans who are trying to, you know how hard it is to go into the civilian world and to try to start over your life, or use some of the skills that you had and do something different?
You know, as far as going from the military to civilian, that wasn't hard for me. And the reason why is because I went into the fire department. And so it is a paramilitary, and I did the firefighter thing and the National Guard at the same time. So I was a paramedic, and then I also was a crew chief on a medevac helicopter in the military. So it kind of was together. And so when I left the military in 2003, it wasn't that big of a transition because I was still in the fire department. But when I left the fire department to civilian, it was very difficult. In fact, even today, I had issues with that. I had some staff members. I have over 50 staff members now, and I had one doing something that they weren't supposed to be doing. And I started to deal with it the way I would deal with it in the military, or the way I deal with it in the fire department, which is completely different than how I got to deal with it civilian. So even now, 15 years later, or 17 years later, I guess, no, 15 years later, I still struggle with it, but it was difficult. I help service members that are getting out with my financial services company, because we bring them in, and we don't have the paramilitary environment, but we have core values, we have a mission, we have a purpose, we have them to do stuff at home. And so we try to keep them on that path, because what I find is when they come out, they lose that mission, they lose the teamwork, they lose the recognition, they lose the advancement, they lose the purpose. And so I try to do that with my company now. But again, I can't just go off on somebody like I could in the military. I got to be a little bit more gentle. As I was told this morning, I need to be more gentle.
I'm sure there are some definite things to overcome. But what would you say was the toughest obstacle then of going and switching from firefighter to what you do now to start to really build this business?
I think the biggest hurdle is realizing that not everybody is going to be working at their full potential. See, in the military, at least in where I was, if you didn't do your job, we died. You know, I worked on a medevac helicopter. If somebody did something wrong and didn't put a bolt on or didn't wire it right, we all died. And I've been in 2 helicopter crashes, and they're not fun.
I'm sure.
Right. And same thing with the fire department. If you don't do it correctly, somebody is going to die. And so that was really tough going into where I would say, here's your job, do this. And they'd be like, I don't want to do it that way. I want to do it this way. Because they're in the trenches. They don't see the 50,000 foot view of why it needs to be done that way. So I think that was the biggest struggle, was getting people to do what they need to do, showing up on time, which is 15 minutes early, you know, going above and beyond what they're supposed to do, taking orders and doing what you tell them to do without asking questions. And there's nothing wrong with asking questions. You know, I remember one time flying in the military up in Wyoming, and this pilot was doing stuff that he shouldn't be doing. And as a crew chief, it's my helicopter and I can tell him what the hell to do. And he wouldn't listen to me. So when we got back, I had him grounded. I'd never flown with him again. And he actually lost his ability for a while to fly helicopters. And unfortunately, a year later, I had to go on a call where he crashed a helicopter and killed 4 people. And so it's not that you have to take orders no matter what, not question it, but sometimes you just need to do what you're told to do. So that was pretty difficult for me to learn that people aren't always just going to do what they're told to do.
At what point did you really know that what you were doing was resonating with so many people across the country? Did you have an aha moment where you went, wow, this is really working for people?
I did. I went and I attended a event in Woodland Hills, California in 2008, November 2008. And it was called Passion to Profit. And it was promoted by Joel Bauer. He was the guy putting on the event. It was a 3-day event. I went to this, and one of the things that he taught was how to get on radio, how to do TV, how to dress. You know, here I am, a poor kid from Idaho that went into the fire department, and I'd be happy in shorts and t-shirts. And yet I was starting a financial services company. It didn't quite match. So he taught us how to dress, and he called it wrapping the package, and how to set up a website and that whole thing. And I got back from California on Friday, the day after Thanksgiving. So on Black Friday, I made 2 phone calls using the script that he gave me, got myself on a Saturday morning radio show where the guy just planned on selling me something because he was a stockbroker. And so he invited me on, and he went live. And I was only supposed to be on for about 5 minutes. 4 hours later, he let me go. So he literally locked up the phones for 4 hours, crashed my website. I couldn't keep back with anybody. And that's when I went from, I'm doing this for free, to I'm going to build a business out of this. So that was my aha moment, was after that, my very first radio interview.
That is terrific. That's a great story. So for people who have all different ideas in what maybe they want to do or are afraid to do, what advice would you give to people who are starting their own companies or they want to become entrepreneurs? Because we all know it's not easy.
It's not easy, but it can be simple. I would recommend a couple things. I mean, I'm really big into books and automotive university. I did go to college for my fire department certificate. I never got a degree. I've been trying to get my GPA from high school. I think it's down in the 1s, just because I worked all through high school. So I didn't do homework. I just take the test. And so I passed, but only because I was good at taking tests. And so I did a lot of reading via books when I was a garbage man, because I was in a garbage shop for 10 hours a day for 5 years. And so I just had headphones and I'd listen to books constantly. So I would recommend reading or listening. And now it's super easy with Audible. Back then I'd get these cassettes and then I have to burn them onto a CD and do that whole thing. Now it's easy with Audible. You just get the book and listen to it. So there's a couple of books I recommend, which they can go to my website, rondilambeth.com, or find me on social media at Rondi Lambeth. And I have a whole recommended book list. But For entrepreneurs, the number one book that I would recommend is called Profit First. I used to recommend E-Myth by Michael Gerber, and Michael's actually a really good friend of mine. And now I recommend Profit First, which is also written by another Michael. And the reason why is E-Myth is how to build a system. It doesn't say anything about how to make money. And 99% of all businesses fail. And an interesting stat that I just read, 90% of all the businesses on the Fortune 500 list right now won't be on the list in 5 to 7 years. So they all fail eventually, most businesses. And it's mainly because they run out of money. So Profit First would be the first book I would read as an entrepreneur. And the second would be Tax-Free Wealth by Tom Wheelwright, because taxes are our biggest expense. It is not anyone's responsibility to reduce your taxes except for yours, not your CPAs, not your attorneys, not your brother, your sister, your mother, your aunt, uncles. It is your responsibility and yours alone. You don't have to be a tax expert, but you have to understand the basics of taxes. And here's the basics. If you do what the government wants you to do, you pay no taxes. I haven't paid income tax in over a decade. If you do what they want you to do, you pay no taxes. So what do you need to do? Learn what they want you to do. So that's what I would recommend if you're a brand new entrepreneur, is Profit First and Tom Wheelwright's Tax-Free Wealth.
You have a podcast too, don't you? Also just about taxes. I think I was clicking on to some different ones because, taxes have changed so much lately too. People are trying to wrap their heads around what to do.
Yeah, I have a podcast called School of Wealth, and it started out in 2010 as Your Credit Matters. And it was a radio show. And this was before podcasts were a thing. And I just take the MP3 and load it on iTunes. So I have over 4,200 different episodes on Your Credit Matters. But then on School of Wealth, I kind of transitioned it. So it's taxes, credit, business funding, entrepreneurship, and personal development. And I do talk about that. I was telling a client yesterday, he hired me to get him some funding for his business. And I said, I got to be frank with you. I don't really like helping business owners build business credit. It's boring to me, but I do it because then I get to sit down with you and do what I love to do, which is teach you how to save on taxes so you stay in business, because I love entrepreneurship. So yes, I do have that podcast called School of Wealth.
Okay, yeah, that's really good for those listening. But and then so let's talk about your Fortress University and what you're doing to help people with their credit. I know you've touched on a lot of ways that you do, but I think it's hard for people to realize that you have some really good advice to change it quickly.
Yeah, Fortress University was started because two reasons. The first reason was people hired me to fix their credit. So they come to me, they're good people. We can see on their credit report they're good people. Sorry, FedEx was here. So people hire me to fix their problems. And so I would go and fix it, and we do it very, very quickly. The problem is we didn't teach them anything, and they'd come right back to us and screw it up again. And it was like giving a 16-year-old keys to your Ferrari. Eventually, they're going to wreck it. Doesn't matter how good of a kid they are, they're going to wreck the car. And so I wanted to create something for people that would teach them how to increase their credit scores, teach them how to manage their money, manage their investments. And so I created Fortress University for that. A lot of people, for example, don't know they have to pay to participate in a 401k. I do this all the time. I'll ask someone, how much do you pay to give the broker the money to put into your 401k? And they're like, nothing, it's free. No, it's not. The average 401k costs you 5 to 7% per year. So if you're putting $10,000 into your 401k, they are stealing $5,000 to $7,000 from you out of your principal every year, and they don't legally have to tell you. People don't know this. And so inside Fortress University, we show them how money really works, how compound interest is calculated, how to pay off your 30-year mortgage in 10 to 12 years without making one extra payment, by simply understanding how money works. So that was the reason I created Fortress University.
Yeah, there's so much that people don't know about. You're right. The information is such power. But so let's talk about FICO versus Feco. What is the difference between these two things?
Sure. FICO versus Feco. Well, FICO is the Fair Isaac Company. That's your FICO credit score. It's been around since 1956. They've created billions and billions, probably in the trillions now, because it's billions of scores a year. And so most of us know what FICO is. It's used, 90% of the banks use FICO. Feco is the other score. So trans risk score, vantage score, the other scores that you see online. So freecreditreport.com, truecredit.com, even my company, creditmojo.com, Credit Karma, they're all using vantage or trans risk scores. So that's what we mean by FICO versus Feco. Now, in the beginning, vantage scores were way off. I mean, when I say way off, your FICO credit score could be a 400 and your vantage score could be a 650. So you go to Credit Karma and you're like, hey, I got an 800 credit score, or I got a 900 credit score. And then you go in to buy a house and they're like, sorry, you got a 400. And you're like, what the hell just happened? Like, I got my credit report. Credit Karma says it's 900. That's a Feco score. So that's the difference between Feco and FICO. Now Vantage is picked up about 1% of FICO's market. And they're really lobbying hard to end that monopoly that the government created in 1992 when they forced mortgage companies to use FICO and only FICO. So now for 30 years, FICO's had a monopoly and the government did it. So Vantage is lobbying really hard and they've cleaned up their algorithm. So now you're within 5 to 50 points. And if you compare it to FICO's Model 10, Vantage is really close. And FICO has 10 different models. And inside each model, there's over 4,000 variations. So really, FICO has over 40,000 different scores and models. So that's why when you go online and you're like, I don't know why I'm so far different. You know, you can go into a bank, for example, you go into Wells Fargo and you could apply for a car loan, a credit card, and a mortgage and get 3 different FICO scores because they're using different models and different softwares for those 3 different scores.
And do you get dinged? I mean, because I think a lot of people are afraid to, what is the best thing to look for out there when you're looking at a house versus a car or anything without making your score go down? I think that's a fear for people.
That's why, you know, I recommend you have your own credit monitoring. It's a necessity. It's almost like car insurance now. It is identity theft insurance. So my company's Credit Mojo. Here's an interesting fact for you. I'm the very first credit repair company that the credit bureaus gave access to credit reports. Prior to me doing it, no credit repair companies could have their own credit monitoring company. And so I have Credit Mojo, get your mojo back, get your credit fixed, get your mojo back. And so I recommend that. So you can go in there and you can pull it every day if you want, but that doesn't have a negative impact on your score, otherwise known as a hard inquiry. So when you go into the bank, like if you went into Wells Fargo and you applied for those 3 loans, it'd be 3 hard inquiries, which may or may not impact your credit score, but it will most likely prevent you from getting a loan in the future because you have too many inquiries on your credit. You know, Chase, for example, has what's called the 524 rule. If you have 5 inquiries with any company for any reason in the last 24 months or 2 years, automatic denial. You could have an 850 credit score, making millions of dollars a year. You apply for a Chase credit card, denied because you went to a car dealership and they pulled your credit 30 times. And now you got to wait 2 years to get that credit card that you wanted with all those points. So inquiries do make a difference. And that's why we work with our clients to get them removed.
So with credit cards, speaking of that, what are some hacks then with wanting to get various credit cards, how to deal with them?
As far as wanting to get them, or how to manage those credit cards?
Well, just manage them yeah. So
yeah, this is that's a great question. In fact, that's usually what I talk about when I do TV shows or TV interviews, is how to manage credit cards. The biggest thing is you need to have at least 3 credit cards. So if you can write this down, write it down, because you're going to want this. It's called the 3-1-1 rule. That's what I call it anyway. 3 credit cards at all times. Not 2, not 1, and definitely not 0. 3 credit cards open and being used every single month. Now, what is a credit card? A credit card is a line of credit issued by a bank or a store. It's a line of credit. 3 credit cards. Number 2, you cannot go over 5% utilization rate. What does that mean? You have a $1,000 credit limit. You can't spend more than 5% or $50. If you do, your score is going to go down by approximately 5 points. So if you go and max out that $1,000 credit card, assume you're going to lose 100 points. Here's what people say, but I pay it off in full every month. Well, that's great. The problem is the bank reports the balance to the credit bureaus 2 weeks before your due date. They report it on the statement date. So that day they actually end the statement and mail it to you, that's when they report it. So if you went and maxed it out, you get your statement in the mail, you pay it that day, it's already been reported to the bureaus that it was maxed out, which then drives down your score. This is one of the reasons that I see entrepreneurs with really poor credit scores. Not poor credit scores, is because they're using personal credit versus business credit cards. They're using personal credit cards. They're maxing it out for the business, paying it off, maxing it out, paying it off. And Fico never knows that it's paid off because the banks report it 2 weeks early. So how do you fix that? Change your due date to around when you get after 2 weeks after you get paid, and then pay off your credit cards on the statement date or before, so it doesn't show the balance. And then lastly, with the credit card, make sure you always have at least $1 on the card. So if, let's say you use $300 and you want to pay it in full, pay $299. Leave $1 on that credit card every single month. The reason for that is it shows activity. Now, if you're using your credit card on a regular basis, like I use my credit card every single day, whether it's me doing it or if it's an automatic payment. But if you're somebody that doesn't want to carry the credit cards around with them, like I have dozens of credit cards I do not carry with me. One pays for Netflix, one pays my cell phone bill, one pays my electric bill, one pays my garbage bill, etc. And then they're set up to be on autopilot, so they pay themselves off in full every month. If you're that type of person, you want to leave $1 balance on there to show the activity. Yeah, you're going to pay a little bit of interest, but the amount of interest that you pay on $1 to have an 800 credit score is worth it.
That's terrific. Yeah, it's a really good advice. Now, during this tax time when everyone's worrying about taxes, do you have any advice then? Or is there anything? I know that everyone's taxes are different, but because it's a new year and it's 2022 and looking back at 2021, which was a bit of crazy, do you have any piece of advice for people who are doing their taxes? Go to the experts or what?
Yeah, the first advice is never do your own taxes. That would be one. Always have someone else do it because you'll pay less if you have someone else do it. 2, there's not a whole lot you can do. If you're an employee, there's only one thing you can do to reduce your taxes. Increase your 401k so the bankers get richer, the Wall Street gets richer. put money in an IRA so that, again, Wall Street can get richer. That's about all you can do as an employee, or have more kids. That doesn't really help with your finances. That's about it, except for one thing. And it's the number one thing you can do to reduce your taxes. Start a home-based business. So if you are an employee and you do not have a home-based business, I would recommend, if you want to eliminate your taxes, start a home-based business. I sit down with people every day, and I will say this right now. If you make less than $100,000 a year, if you start a home-based business and do 3 little things that I teach all of my business partners to do, you'll pay 0 income tax for 2022. I can't do anything about 2021. But if you reach out to me and we start a home-based business, so you can join my company as a part-time referral partner, literally all you do is you put your link, your affiliate link, on your Facebook page. The moment you make $1, you are technically in business. And now I can eliminate 100% of your taxes up to $100,000 of income. So the advice would be, start a home-based business, whatever that means for you.
Okay, very good. Now Julie has been diligently writing in all of these different tidbits that you've talked about, the 311 rule, and we wanted to open up the floor for the folks that have joined just to ask questions. So if any of you have questions, Julie, I don't know if you want to jump in or if you have an ability to unmute.
I can navigate the questions if you guys want to post them in the chat. We do have a couple that came in through Facebook, and the email that I'll ask why people who may be thinking of them is, some people are asking about their loans, and student loans is come up because we have some students online asking about what's the best way to pay those off or go after them. Some of them have massive student loan debt, and they feel a bit overwhelmed about how to approach it.
Yeah, it is an issue. And the reason it's an issue is because our government is extremely greedy. 33% approximately of our GDP is interest from student loans. So if you're thinking the government's going to wipe out your student loan, as of a year ago, when I talked to a congressman, he's like, that's never going to happen because it's 30% of our GDP. So just forget about that. The reason that it's an issue is not because college is so expensive. That's part of it, but that's not the reason it's an issue. The reason it's an issue is because they're not giving you the whole truth about the student loans. And that is, they're what's called a negative AM loan. So here's how this works. When you go out and you get a car loan or a mortgage or any other type of loan, there's going to be principal, there's going to be interest. So let's say your payment's $300 a month. $100 goes towards interest, $200 goes towards principal and interest. Pretty simple. When you have a credit card and you make that minimum payment, some goes to principal, most goes to interest, but eventually after 22 years of making your minimum payment, your credit card will be paid off in full. Here's how it works with student loans. It's a negative AM loan. So let's say your payment is $300. The interest alone on that student loan is most likely $400 a month. So what happens if the interest is $400 and the payment's $300? The balance goes up by $100 every single month. And that's why the student loan issue is such a problem, is because people are making their payments thinking they're making a difference, and actually the balance is raising every month. They don't know this because legally they don't have to show it on the statement. After 20 years, the loan converts to a 20-year term loan, and then you make payments for an additional 20 years. So if you graduate college and you owe $30,000, after paying interest for 20 years, you will end up owing about $100,000, and then you start all over. That's the problem with student loans. So what's my suggestion? My suggestion is you get a copy of your statement, and once you graduate, They usually combine all your loans into one. So you make one payment. And then each semester was an actual individual loan. It's called a sequence number. So when you call the servicer, ask them for the full sequence number and your statement showing all the different loans. Because if you went to college for 4 years, you're going to have a minimum of 8 sequences or 8 individual loans. Then you want to start making extra payments to the lowest balance loan. So you'll send in your regular payment, then you make an extra payment, and you put the sequence number on the memo. So that extra amount goes to principal only on the lowest loan. And when that's paid off, you move up to the next lowest loan. If you don't do it that way and you send extra payments, they're going to take the extra principal and they're going to apply it generally to the lowest interest rate, because usually they have different interest rates depending on when you sign the paperwork throughout the years. Or they'll separate it over the two, or they'll put an escrow account, and then they do some funny math and they break it up and they'll send you a refund, or maybe they'll apply it to interest, or they do some other crazy stuff. So that's what I recommend. So hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, I didn't even know that about the sequence loans. I just learned something.
Yeah, I was also thinking just too about for credit scores. I know that's a huge thing for how quickly people can make it better. You know, when they're trying to get a loan for a house or whatever, or like they want it to be a 740. You had that class. Can you explain the class, the amazing class 7 days? Is it really possible to change your score in a short amount of time?
It is. So the class was 7 days to 740 credit. And yes, it is possible to change your credit score in just a matter of hours, really. And but there's some caveats to that. So remember I talked to you about how the credit cards will report on the statement date, not the due date. Well, generally credit card companies and generally all furnishers. So furnishers are banks or creditors that report to the credit reporting agency. We just call them credit bureaus and we call them banks. But so when the furnisher reports to the credit bureau, they do it once a month. That's it. So let's say today is February 2nd, 2022. And let's say that the credit card reported on the 1st of every month. And you hear me talking and you go, I'm going to pay off my credit card because that's the number one way to raise my credit score. And you pay it off in the 2nd. You will not see an increase in your credit score from that payment until March 1st, because they're not going to report until March 1st. Now, if you listen to me today and it's February 2nd and they report on the 3rd and you pay off the credit card today, you'll see a difference tomorrow. So yes, you can see a drastic increase in your credit score when they report. Another thing you can do is if you go out and you got one credit card now and you go get 2 more, that is going to increase your credit score. Or here's a trick that I teach people is add your children, regardless of their age, if they're still in your house, really regardless of their age, if they're responsible, add them to your credit card as an authorized user. If your friends have bad credit, your neighbor, your husband, your wife, your significant other, if someone has bad credit and they need help and you're willing to help them, add them to your credit card that you've had for a while that's paid off or paid down, that's being used, add them as an authorized user. The moment that reports all of your history, so let's say you've had that account for 10 years and your 4-year-old has no credit history, the following month, 10 years of credit history will show up on your 4-year-old's credit report, even though they're only 4 years old. And yes, 4-year-olds have credit reports. You just don't see it, but they have them. So add your friend. And here's how authorized users work. Imagine I'm going to go to San Diego, which I do quite a bit. And Julie, you and I are going to go to lunch. And I drive over to your house, but we want to conserve gas. And so we ride together. Now, if I get in the car with you, Julie, and what you don't know is I have 5 DUIs, does that impact your car insurance because of my driving record? No.
Yeah.
Right? Because I'm just sitting in the passenger seat. Does your maintenance on your car, your insurance, does that impact my wallet? No. I'm just sitting in the driver's seat. It's the same thing with when you add someone on as an authorized user. So if you add your children, your friend, or whatever onto your credit card, their bad credit history does not impact yours, but your positive history impacts them. Now, if you go and ruin your credit, it's going to hurt them too. But that's super easy to fix. But generally, people with really good credit don't go out and screw it up. So that's one way that you can actually go increase someone's credit scores by using the credit cards and authorized users. So hopefully that answered your question on that.
Yeah.
Oh, that was great.
Yeah. And we have probably one more question we can do before we close out is, and this came in through Facebook, is the person said, you mentioned only having 3 credit cards. I have a lot of credit cards. Should I close all of those out and just get down to 3?
I'm glad she brought that up because I didn't mention only have 3. I said you need to have at least 3. And that happens a lot. So people think that that's what they hear, but you should have at least 3. I have dozens. You can have as many credit cards as you want, as long as you're not opening new credits every single month or every year or so, because then it lowers your average length of credit history, which then have a negative impact on your score. Never close a credit card. If you go and close your credit card, you're going to see a significant drop on your credit. So never close a credit card unless the annual fee is just so much and financially it's not worth it for you. Then there's a difference between financial reasons and credit scores. If like my American Express, I got 2 of them. They're both $700 a year in annual fees. Well, it's worth it for me because I get enough rewards to pay the $700. But if you're a W-2 employee or a student or someone struggling and you're not using all those rewards, there's no reason to have the damn card because it's expensive. So you never want to close the cards. You can have more than 3, but if you do, every single one of them has to be used every single month. Netflix on one, electric bill on one, cell phone bill on one, water bill, garbage bill, car insurance, internet, Hulu, whatever. Put them on these cards, set up automatic payments so they automatically pay themselves off in full. So you don't have to remember to pay the $10.99 from Netflix. It automatically pays it off. So I love the question. Thanks for bringing it up. You can have it. You have to have at least 3 credit cards, but there's really no limit to how many you can have, except for one thing. And that is at some point, Fico is going to lower your credit score a little tiny bit when you have too many. And the reason for that is they found that people with 20, 30 credit cards are more likely to be late than someone with only 3 credit cards because of management. But when I say they'll lower you, you'll go from an 850 to maybe an 842. So it's really not that big of a deal. The advantage of having all those cards is you can go and max out the one you're using on a regular basis and don't have to worry about the utilization rate because they take it across the whole board. So if you have 12 credit cards, it's all of the credit limits. So you can max one out and just put $10 on the rest of them. You'll be fine on the utilization rate. So hopefully that answers that.
And so before we end, we also wanted to let everyone know that we've been working with Rondi on creating these amazing courses. And so we have his courses just coming out on Monday, which the cost is $397. And then if you need the course with repair, that is $1997. And if you guys are interested in that, in the chat, I put in the link, synergylearninginstitute@gmail.com, that you can email to sign up for that. It's going to be limited this first round as we let people into the course. And then of course, we'll be expanding it more and more. more. I also put in Rondi's companies in there, Fortress, Credit Pro, and Credit Mojo. The links are in the chat. So make sure to grab those and hop on. And of course, if you have any other questions, you can direct them to me, and then I will reach out to Rondi for any of you guys who have all of those questions. I mean, this was fantastic. I just learned something new about student loans. I had no idea about student loans, had these like individual loans and everything, which
No
is
wonder I was paying for so long.
I know. I did. I literally, guys, I have to tell you before we get off, working with Rondi, and as I was helping him design this course, literally I was having these moments, Rondi, where I was like, okay, when I was 25, I did everything I was not supposed to do. Like going through the thing, I was like, did that, dang it, did that. And so
Check.
I know. And I was thinking to myself, I wish, and I didn't get a checking account. And like you, Rondi, I grew up like on a farm. I had no experience. I went to college and I just went and got a checking account and credit cards. I'd never had them before. Yeah. And I used them quite a bit because I was a poor student. And so then, you start thinking to yourself, oh, wow, how did I get $10,000 in debt? And so I wish that this was just like a class that every high school kid had to take, before they step out into the world. So thank you so much for coming on, Rondi. Linda, thank you so much as well for.
Oh, it was my pleasure. And Rondi, that was just such valuable information. And, even though I was asking a lot of the questions, I was taking a lot of notes as well. So thank you so much.
Yeah. So thank you guys, and feel free to reach out if any of you are interested in the course, or even just having Rondi come speak at your corporations or anything like that. I mean, it's invaluable information. So I'm going to sign this all off now, and we'll of course have this recording. If any of you want it to rewatch it again, just shoot us an email and we'll send you a copy of it.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Take care.